Welcome to Subramani. The best investors in the world have a system, but you cannot take that system and just apply it mindlessly in your case, because you may not be able to work it out, and if it is very rigid, you may find it very difficult to adhere to it, and you may just scrap it, or you may just not use it at all, or you may just modify it according to what you want to do every time, and so the whole purpose of doing it is lost. So this over specification is also very difficult. Let's take a simple example. If somebody asks you to maintain personal accounts, you get very enthusiastic and you create a lot of groups and subgroups. So it is not just pet expenses, it is pet expenses broken into veterinary expenses, purchase of a pet, buying food, buying medicines, right? You keep breaking up in your initial enthusiasm, and afterwards you find that, oh God, you've created a system by which it does not allow you to move ahead unless you classify every expense, whereas you could just create big ones saying discretionary expense, non-discretionary expense, entertainment, hobbies, pets, something like that. When it is very broad, like you put all your non-discretionary, your rent and everything into one box, because your school fees and rent and even EMI can go into one box, because it doesn't really have too much of control. You can't have too much control over it in the immediate short run, right? So if you over specify, chances are you will break it, or you will find it very difficult to adhere to. So don't be so inflexible. But it is the same. I will also tell you that if you fail to plan, then which means you're planning to fail. So you have to walk between all this, right? So telling you that you have to have a plan, and I'm trying to tell you that don't over specify, don't make the specifications too rigid, saying, oh, this has to be done and this should not be done. Simply following a recipe can be disastrous, right? You could make you know how to make a cake, so, or you may know how to make some item, but if there is nobody who's going to eat it, is there a point in even making it, right? So that's very important. So don't be vulnerable to a rigid plan, don't get stuck in the plan, right? So that's very important. Instead, have a mindful plan. Think what is happening, why is it happening, how you can overcome it, right? So it gives you I remember the book on being mindful living, right? So if you have mindful living, mindful eating, then what you have to do is mindful investing. You should know what you're doing, why you're doing it, right? So once you know that, then you know how much flexibility to build in. It cannot be completely prescriptive, saying this is after this has to happen, after this has to happen. It's very difficult. Then because then you get trapped into something called a confirmation bias. You take the current data and you apply it to a model, and that model itself may not be working, right? If that model, like suppose buy and hold is not working, how will you do a buy and hold in something like a Paytm or a Zomato, right? How would you have held suppose you have a very strict buy and hold policy, and saying anyway, if it's an investment, I will not sell, or I will average on the way down. Let us assume that you had bought Paytm for the first time in 2150. How long would you go about averaging it, right? You may not average it. What happens even if you had averaged in Zomato? Today it is available at the issue price. The issue price was somewhere near 80 and it is available around 80, but it made a trip up to 160 and came back. What would have you done with that? Would you have said, no, I know it's an investment, but I still have a trailing stop loss, so at 160 rupees I had a 20% trailing stop loss, so at 125 I would have got rid of the shares. That's fine, then you would have still done well. But what if you said, no, I don't know about Zomato, so I'll buy 100 at every dip? So you kept buying 100 shares, and today you have something like 7,000-8,000 shares, and you at a price of say 125, and you have no clue what to do with it, right? So you can't be too rigid about a lot of things that you do, simply because the market keeps evaluating. The market does not know how to evaluate a Paytm. Market does not know how to evaluate a Zomato. So you might see Zomato at 800, you may see Zomato at 47 rupees, as Damodaran says. right? So you don't know. With all that, you have to have a flexible attitude towards some of the new shares that you're buying. Or you say, I will only invest in mutual funds, and when a mutual fund buys a Zomato, that's fine. I'm assuming that they have done their due diligence. I will not invest. So that is also possible. If you see, what happens is, when there are mega changes happening, your old strategy could be ridiculously wrong. For example, in 2008, mindlessly, absolutely mindlessly, people were buying A-rated paper or AAA rated paper. I don't think the rating agencies knew what they were doing, and the investors didn't know what they were doing, but everybody was rigid. Everybody said, oh, if it is AAA, I don't have to worry. That is when if the journey of the paper from AAA to D is 6 months, how long can you keep on fooling yourself saying it's AAA, I'll buy? Obviously the rating institutions failed, but the people who are buying also failed, right? So holding on to bank stocks, saying bank stocks can't go down till the banks needed a bailout. You never knew. If you were in a bank which went bankrupt, you would have just gone kaput with that, right? So have a plan, but don't be so rigid that you get caught in it and don't know how to handle the whole situation. Markets will throw such googlies at us. It will be really very tricky to handle. You're a right-hand batsman, you don't know how to handle a googly, or you keep on learning how to handle a googly, and there's a pace bowler who comes at 150 speed, and you can't even see what is happening, right? So the market will bowl fast balls, it bowl bouncers, it will hit you on the helmet, you will see a Chinaman, you will see a googly, you will see all this. For example, how prepared can you be with all your strategy for a 50% drawdown, right? Suppose you've got 100 rupees in equity and it becomes 50 rupees. Will you have the resilience to stay on, right? So you can have a plan which says, oh, you should then be averaging, but the question is, how will you implement it? You are very convinced that the Eurozone is going to explode and the Euro is going to explode. Fine, you can think this is going to happen. Can you really have your strategy in place? And if you have your strategy, when will you move? When will you think that, oh, now the dollar is very vulnerable because the petrodollar is going away, and there is cryptocurrency available, gold available? Why should you take the risk of keeping your reserve money in US dollar? Should US dollar be a reserve currency or no? Let us assume it should not be. How are you going to do? What are you going to do? How flexible are you, right? These are some of the problems which investors face. Investors have to decide everything now, and they have to be prepared to modify their mental models, but also not make sure that while you're changing your mental model, it is not because of your confirmation bias. You're saying, no, this is in this combination, company based in Delhi with these promoters cannot do well, and you find when it is doing well, you try to fit that into your confirmation bias by saying, no, something is wrong, I will not act, right? So be flexible. As new data comes, you will have to make up your mind to change your mind, right? So new data will come. Absolutely, new businesses are coming, new business models are coming. People with good ideas and absolutely no money are still getting funded, right? So all these things are happening. When the world is changing and it is so dynamic, you need to have an investment plan, otherwise you will go awry. And that plan has to be mindful, not really rigid and make you suffer. Thank you.